3:30. Welcome everyone to the fourth book study session with Stacy Chambers of the Sensing and Learning. And your opening code for the day is integrating. And I'll put that in the chat. Integrating. All right, Stacy, take it away.
Awesome. I do need permission to share my screen if you don't mind. I've got a few slides and videos to show today. This
the last time I'll remember it.
It's okay. All good. All good. But this is my absolute favorite week of the book study. It's my favorite part of the book Sensing and Learning, really digging into the main intervention strategy for this population, which is all based around routines. And obviously, this is my favorite part, but we couldn't get here with all of the other pieces that we've been going over prior. So really understanding our sensory motor stage learner, understanding those zones and how to assess for where they are currently functioning. That helps us determine their present level and also the types of goals that we want to target within our routine. Then we talked about the learning media assessment, and that is so critical for building our routine because we have to make sure that our routine is highly motivating and it's built around something that they absolutely love. This is going to help ensure that they are engaged and really going to give their best effort to participate when we really do that routine consistently. So what I want to do today is talk about the main components of a routine, what makes a routine, what helps distinguish this sensing and learning routine apart from any other routines that we may do with our students. And then I really want to spend a big part of the session looking at a few of my students' routines and some of the videos. So let's dig into just a few of these slides going over kind of the main components of what makes a routine. And this is mainly out of, we're starting there in chapter 8 in the Teach chapter. And I love that it's called Teach because this really is how we are going to teach our students the skills that they need to move through those sensory motor stage zones. But first, just kind of a recap of what makes a routine. What makes it different than the other things that we're doing in the classroom all day long? And this is really important because I know from my own experience working with a bunch of different teachers in the classrooms in my district, and then also visiting and working with teachers in trainings all around the country, this term routine is something that we use for kind of to describe a lot of different things. And so I want to make sure that when we're talking about a routine, we have the components that that are really critical. I'm going to put my earbud in because my dog is can hear him back there, but he's in his crate and he's not happy. So hopefully this will help. Okay, so what makes a routine? Number one, it has a clear signal that the activity is starting. And so as we think about what makes a routine different than other parts of our day, we have to always make sure that we're identifying the parameters of the routine for our student and having a clear indicator through an object symbol or a picture symbol will really help to signify to them that it's beginning. Then we need to make sure that all the steps within that routine are done the same way and in the same order every single time we do it. And this can really, come down to being very detailed about doing it in the same exact place, having it done by the same person, using the same exact materials every single time. And we'll talk about it a little bit, but when we think about our sensory motor stage learner, the students in those earlier zones, like extended space or attention zone, the more specific that we probably have to be about it being the same person and in the same place and using all of the exact same materials. But having that consistency is really key when it comes to a routine. Another thing that we need to think about in just building that consistency is that we need to provide assistance in the same way each time. We need to think about what type of prompting we're doing. And really thinking about how the student is going to be engaged at each of the steps and how we're going to support that engagement. The pacing is really thought through, and we're providing that consistency of pacing every time. And then we also always have an ending. As I mentioned, in a routine, we need to make sure that our students know that the routine is finished. And I really love the section in the book that talks about those calendar steps and using the object symbol at the end in a finished container to demonstrate that our routine is finished. But however those things are done, these are the main components that make a routine and really are what sets it apart from other things going on in the classroom. I'm just curious, from your experiences in the classroom, do you find that routines are done with all of these components consistently, or do you see some inconsistencies with things that we're calling routines in the classroom, or just maybe any misunderstandings about what makes a routine? I'd love if you would share that in the chat, just kind of your experience on how much you see this type of routine happening in the classroom. I know everywhere is really different with their experience and understanding. I know that, you know, we talk about routines and how beneficial they can be for a variety of students with special needs, and even students with without any additional disabilities. We use routines all the time in the classroom. I see some comments just about consistency is difficult with all the things in the classroom. Clear beginnings and endings can be more clear at times than others. And I agree, Carly, routines are much more loose and don't hold the structure and the consistency needed. And that's exactly my experience. I think many of us on my team really felt that we were using routines with students, and we had the right idea in mind, but we really hadn't taken the time to specify each of these different components. And so our routines tended to lean towards activities that we did often with that student, and we were not necessarily as prepared or had thought through all of the different components. And I agree, Catherine, about routines, how to support that as an itinerant. We will talk a little bit about that at our next session with the collaboration section, and just how our role can support that, and some ideas that I have on some things that I've done. So hearing from a lot of you, lots of different reasons, lots of different factors about what makes this difficult, and maybe some potential ideas about how to help it be more effective and consistent in writing those up. Kathleen, thank you for sharing. And that's definitely a big piece of this sensing and learning process. So we have routines, and actually had a great question emailed to me from Faith a couple weeks ago between our sessions, asking about, you know, we can use routines in the classroom for feeding, for, you know, restroom routines, for parts of our day, for many different reasons. And so I think that was a great observation, because we do, if we're considering our students' needs, we do build routines around a lot of those activities that happen on a daily basis, and we can make them structured with each of these components. And so that's really important in helping to build the coherence and participation, and setting our expectations for our students and helping them be involved in that. And also, those routines can be used for different purposes, because maybe it is just helping our students to feel at ease, to know what's coming, to reduce any behaviors and increase participation. And so we're also going to talk a little bit about what sets a sensing and learning routine apart from these types of routines that are done in the classroom. So why are these routines important? And I've already talked a little bit about this, and hopefully you pulled a lot of these things as you were reading these chapters this week. But routines provide consistency, and consistency is what particularly this population needs to not get overwhelmed, to not you know, tend to move towards those extended states because they're overwhelmed and stressed. They're having consistency. They start to have some anticipation and start to expect what's coming next. They know what's expected of them and how to participate. it's predictable. If we're doing it the same way every time, again, they start to feel more at ease, more open, less closed off, more willing to participate. When we see that they're able to anticipate the next steps, they're also able to participate in more ways. They're more open, and we're seeing those cognitive skills emerge. When we do the steps in the same way every time, we're giving our students an opportunity to practice new skills in a functional way. So we're setting the routine up for them to participate at their maximum level. And when we do it repetitively, as often as possible, they're getting so many more opportunities to practice that skill. We've used, as I mentioned, we can use routines to make undesirable experiences more tolerable. So again, that could be something like a changing routine, or at home, toothbrushing or things like that. When we have these pieces surrounding a routine and built in, again, it can become a little bit more desirable and tolerable for that student. Higher opportunities for participation, and then routines can be expanded on. Once we have a level of participation and expectation for what our students are doing, and they start to achieve and participate at those different steps, then we have the opportunity to expand and add new skills for them. And then I think maybe most importantly, what these routines provide are a sense of safety and coherence. And so this is that sense of just safety, at peace and trust for the caregiver or learning partner that they're doing the routine with. And it just allows our students to really take risks more often, be more willing to try things, and be alert and engaged at a higher level. Okay, any questions about routines, just kind of the bare bones of when we're saying the word routine, what we mean by that, and why those routines are important? I'm hearing from a lot of your previous comments, you do have some experience with routines, whether or not it's at the consistency or scripted out in such a way that meets all of those requirements, but that maybe you do have some experiences and background knowledge of routines, and that's really, really great. But definitely add any questions that you might have in the chat as we go, and we're going to kind of turn towards this sensing and learning routine and what sets it apart. And I like to do that with this kind of metaphor that has to do with Brad Pitt. And so when I think about different types of routines that we use in the classroom, it's a lot like the different versions of Brad Pitt that we see in the magazines or on TV. So this picture here is of a very kind of casual Brad Pitt. He's got tattered jeans and just kind of layers on. It looks like he's headed out the door, and some paparazzi took his picture. And so pretty casual, just everyday kind of thing. And so this is what I think about when I think about the routine that maybe has to do with toothbrushing or a restroom routine. It's just something we're doing. We do it every day. And if it's a good routine, we have all those components. We have a beginning and end. We have all the steps that are consistent, but it's just there, and it's something that we're doing consistently. The next picture I have is Brad Pitt looking a little bit more sharp, a little bit more put together. He's clearly at a photo shoot. He's got some more, tailored clothes and his hair done. He's, probably set up with a nice background. And so this is kind of what I think about at that next level of specificity when it comes to routines that we're writing for our students. Maybe this is a routine that we're tailoring really more specifically to something that we know our student really likes. We're thinking about some things that might help them to be successful. And again, we have all of those components of a routine, and we're thinking through it in a little bit more specificity. This last picture of Brad Pitt, he is in a tuxedo. He is definitely looking sharp and looking great. He's ready for the red carpet. He's ready for, all the cameras and photo shoots. And I don't think any of us could deny that that's a pretty good looking Brad Pitt. And that's the Brad Pitt that I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about a sensory motor instructional routine. This is where we're just, we're bringing out all the stops. We are thinking about every single component of what will help our student be most engaged, participate at their maximum level. It's going to be something that is definitely a +3 from their learning media assessment. And we are thinking about all the factors, all the accommodations. What's the environment like? How are we going to hold up the material so that they can see it? How are they going to get the support so they can touch it? And how are we going to build this into their daily schedule so that it's done on, that consistent basis that we absolutely need? So that's kind of just an imagery for you as we're thinking about the types of routines that we can use for students. And this sensing and learning routine, the importance of having all of those components. This is a very specific, targeted routine that we are building for a very high needs student. They need us to really create an instructional routine with that specificity because we've tried everything and it's not working. And we really need to do everything we can to build those skills and pull them along through that sensory motor stage. So what makes a red carpet Brad Pitt? What makes an instructional sensory motor stage routine? What are the components? And this is what we've been learning about all this time. We've been building upon through our past weeks of study. But number one, an instructional routine is instructional when we are targeting skills in their instructional zone, in that zone of proximal development. So we've done their assessment to know their present level. What zone are they spending the majority of their participation in? And then we're looking at new skills in that scope and sequence for the next zone over. So it's only instructional if we're teaching new skills. And so it's really important that we spend the time doing the assessment and then as a team targeting which of the skills in that next zone do we want to work on. Number two, an instructional routine is using highly attractive learning media. It has to be something that they like. We are not going to be able to teach new skills if we're really kind of doing a routine around something that they have to do, but they don't enjoy doing. It's going to be really hard to teach new skills and build engagement if it's something that they don't enjoy. So that's why that learning media assessment is so important. We got to find that +3 item, and we're going to build the routine around that. Number three, an instructional routine has to contain the accommodations and supports for all the different areas. So we're going to, think of a great routine about something that they love, and we're going to have different steps. And at each step, we're really thinking about what do they need to do at that step, and how are they going to do it? How are they going to look at that object? How are they going to explore that object? What supports do they need? And that really does take a collaborative team of all the professionals on board to look at that. This instructional routine is going to be done as often as possible. And I know somebody commented how hard it can be to kind of enforce that or support that as an itinerant teacher. But ideally, this routine could be done daily, sometimes more than once a day for some of our students. And the more that that routine is done, we're really giving an opportunity to strengthen those neurological networks. And that's when we're going to start to see initiation of those steps of new skills coming. And then lastly, again, any plug I can make about the research that my team did for these instructional routines, I'll make it. But we know that this type of routine is research-based for this population. And this is so important because we don't have a lot of research to support what we should be doing with our students to help them learn. How should we teach our students? We don't have a lot of research to show us, but we do have the research article that my team published on these strategies. So our instructional routines contain all of these components, making sure that proximal zone of proximal development, highly attractive learning media, accommodations, and we were doing it on a regular basis. So this is what kind of sets this sensing and learning routine, instructional routine, apart from those other things that are going on in your classroom. I'd love to kind of hear from you. You know, is this something that you had thought about before? Were you able to make that connection as you read, seeing how this type of routine varies a little bit from other things that you've done in the past? Or is this something that you've already been implementing in some ways? Love to hear about that. If you can, feel free to share, shout out, or share it in the chat.
Can share if you have, but I definitely just like to know that some of this is connecting with you all, that you're able to kind of see the difference between an activity that you're doing in a classroom, a routine, and then an instructional routine for a sensory motor stage learner. And again, it really comes down to the specificity. It's the work that we're putting in behind the routine. Sometimes the routine can be really simple, but it's how we got there that makes it impactful for our student. So let's just take a look at this lesson plan template. This is what is provided in the book, and there's some really good examples. I think there's one on page 66 that shows a routine scripted out and what those steps look like. And we're going to take a look at the video that goes along with the routine on page 66 if you want to find that as well. But I just want to talk about the components that are here in the template and why they're important. So again, and I think somebody alluded to it in the comments as well, but just that the effort for writing it down and for thinking through all of the components really makes a huge difference. And we do this, other teachers do this for all of their, lesson plans that they do in the classroom. This is the lesson plan for your students' instruction. And what's great about it is the effort that goes in, hopefully this routine is really successful and you're using it for probably a pretty long time to get to the point where you're seeing the progress that you're looking for. So that effort is well worth the time. But the components here at the top, you'll see this is kind of just some of the logistics. The student, if you're going to kind of name the routine, who is the teaching partner? Who's going to be the person actually doing the routine? And then the observing team members. So for many of our routines, it's most of us, it's me, the TDI, probably the PT, the OT, SLP, potentially the O&M, sometimes our AT person. I love when our adaptive PE teacher gets involved. So whoever's really interested in supporting that routine will put their name there on the third row. And then the location. So where in the classroom do we plan on doing this routine? Then in the next column, we have the materials. So what do we need for the routine? What position is the student going to be in during the routine? And that's, we can go back to our assessment and look at our positioning summary to see if there's any data to support that. And then the frequency. So how often do we feel that this routine needs to be done? Every day, more than once a day, logistically, where can we fit this in and what commitment can we make to providing that frequency and consistency? And then the duration. So, maybe how long does that actually take to do the routine? And then that last row in that column is testing period. And this is where we're just going to kind of decide, we're going to write this routine and then we're going to give it a good go with a little testing period. This is kind of just where you're working out any of the kinks. We're going to look at it. Different team members are going to come observe. We're going to make any comments on accommodations, or if it just doesn't flow right, you can make some tweaks there, and then we're going to set it in stone, because once we do, we want to do it the same way every single time without changing too much, so we can really help our students truly anticipate what's coming next and that it really is predictable and consistent. Okay, then on the bottom part, that's where we're really going through each of the steps. And I love that with this template, it starts with the focus on the student. And so our first thing we do is think about, what do we want the student to do at every single step? So that's where we're going to write that. And then in the next column, that's where we're going to write, what is the teacher going to do? So sometimes on routines, we see it flip-flopped, and I really like the way Millie is having us do it here. And in that partner section, you can be really specific with, any accommodations, where you're holding the materials, supports you're providing, what you want to say. Often we'll put in quotations, what the person says. If you're waiting any amount of time, you can put that there. So that's really where we're going to put in those key pieces that set this apart, with those accommodations at each step. And then in the third column, you are putting your embedded skills. So this is where you're going to your scope and sequence, or to the IEP goals that you've designated, the goals that you're targeting within that instructional zone, or the zone of proximal development, and what you want the student to do at each step. So there should be, within a routine, at least one targeted skill at their instructional level. And then you might have a few skills that maybe they already have, but you're wanting to reinforce, or you may have some skills that are above their zone of proximal development that you're exposing them to. As long as you notate that there, and you know which ones you're really taking data towards for their instructional zone, that's important. And I love when we have all of this here in a lesson plan. We can refer to it. We can show our administrators as they do their walkthroughs. We can share it with other team members. We can refer back to it if we're watching video of our student and us doing the routine to make sure we're staying on track. It really just helps us all know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and kind of keep us accountable to it. I've had many teachers that use the template and then add additional columns to the right where they keep their data. So they just put, Monday through Friday, and take data on those different skills right here on the template. And then others who take data in different way, but it gives us really truly a place to come back to know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're doing it. Are there any questions about the template and how we script out these different routines? No questions? Y'all are quiet today, and that's okay, but please feel free to ask questions if you do have questions. I know that, my main goal through this whole process is, reading the book and then making that connection of how you can apply it to your own practice with your own students. So definitely take advantage of having me here to kind of answer any of those things if you have them. And feel free. Oh, did somebody pop on with a question?
Yeah, Stacy, I'm going to ask a question. Looking at all the members of the team that need to be a part of this, did you have a good strategy for actually having all those people available to plan this routine? Or did you sort of initiate, here's the idea, here are my pieces, and then ask people to fill in parts? I just think it's kind of a challenge to actually all be able to collaborate at the same time. So
yes, that's a great question. And I think every team dynamic may be a little bit different. My team, we got into a really good rhythm of trying to find time for at least a couple of us to write the routine together, and then seek additional team members' input. And then the better at it we got, we didn't always have everybody from the get-go. So sometimes the classroom teacher scripted out a routine. Sometimes it's me scripting out a routine, but then always sharing it with the team to say, so-and-so, I really, would love your input specifically about the supports for, their participation when they have to reach out and touch the items, or with the SLP, what do you think about, this particular spot, where what words are we using, or is there something that you think we should be looking for in terms of their communication here? And so they kind of know, where they fit in on certain steps and can provide some feedback. And then the other thing that's really great too is if we start a routine during that testing phase, getting some video and then sharing that with the team members, and then even specifically asking for input. Like, we gave it our best shot here with what we think the accommodations can look like. What insight do you have? And I find that team members really like that. My team uses videos really consistently. A lot of us use those as our consultation minutes with students, because we're really able to see them in action and provide some, pretty specific feedback. And I'll share some tools with that next time that I've used with my teams for that collaboration before. Melissa is asking, is a routine designed to incorporate existing goals, or are you writing goals once you know what the routine is going to look like? Great question. Ideally, you are going through the assessment process and you're thinking about, okay, what do I want the student to learn next, right? So I'll kind of share as we talk about this with Arna. I'm about to show her video. She was a student who, when we first did her assessments, she was pretty solidly in attention zone. She was able to maintain attention with her teacher, Mallory, or with, an object that we were showing her. She showed us attention by sometimes looking at the object, or just smiling in response to a sound or a touch. And so she had those skills pretty well. So we knew that we wanted to work on exploration for her. We know we wanted to target some skills focused on her initiating interaction with an actual object. So we had that in the back of our mind. Then we did our learning media assessment, and we discovered that she really loved bells, the sound of bells. She responded really strongly to that object and that item. So that's when we put 2 and 2 together. We're like, okay, we know she likes the bells, and we know we want her to initiate interaction with an object. So now we're going to build a routine around those 2 things together. So that's kind of usually how we do it. It's like, we know what we want them to work on, we know what they like, and how can I kind of get creative to merge those 2 things together. So there's times where we build a routine and then we think, oh, we could also probably put a skill here, at this step, incorporating that too. So kind of to answer your question, you can kind of maybe sneak in some additional skills once you have a routine. But I usually start with a goal in mind, what they like, and then build it out, if that makes sense. Hopefully that answered your question. And I'll show you a few. I'm going to show a few examples of some routines and kind of how we got there and how we developed it. So this is a routine of Arna. I think I've shared a little bit about her, and she's the one that is pretty much woven throughout the book. I want to show her examples so that if you want to follow along with the routine scripted out, you can. And again, that pretty much starts on, actually page 66 is the lotion, and then her bell routine is on page 68. So you can kind of follow along with how it looks on paper and then what it looked like in real life. And so hopefully you're able to see some things that I think really set this routine apart from anything else that we had ever done with Arna. So hopefully you kind of see what sets this type of routine apart from other things you've done in the classroom before.
Bell's routine. Exploration. Arna learns direct body, object, cause, and effect by moving her body to ring bells. While Arna lies in supine on a wedge, Ms. Mallory tells Arna that it is time for her move bells routine by presenting bells in the now container using sound, movement, and high visual contrast accommodations. The bell bracelet has orange fabric attached to it to make it a more attractive visual target. Ms. Mallory uses elbow support to help Arna reach for and touch the bells so she can integrate visual and tactile information while reading her calendar.
Get ready. The bell is on your hand. Move hand.
In phase 1 of the routine, Ms. Mallory places the bells on Arna's hands, knees, feet, and head. She labels each body part and tactually models movement to make the bells ring.
The bell is on your knee. Move knee. The bell is on your foot. Move foot. The bell is on your foot. Move foot. Bell is on your knee. Move knee. All right, the bell is on your head. Move head. All right, Anna, it's your turn.
In the second phase of this routine, Ms. Mallory places the bells on each body part and gives Arna ample time to move them herself in order to make the bells ring.
Get ready. The bell is on your hand. Move hand. Good job, Arna. All right. The bell is on your hand. Move hand. Good job. All right. The bell is on your knee. Move knee. Good. Move knee. All right. The bell is on your foot. Move foot.
After 12 seconds with no movement, Ms. Mallory gives Arna a verbal and physical prompt.
Move foot.
After waiting an additional 12 seconds, she provides Arna with physical assistance for movement.
I'm gonna help you. Move foot.
Ms. Mallory moves the bells to Arna's other foot.
Right, the bell is on your foot. Move foot.
Ms. Mallory uses concise verbal instructions and remains quiet during wait time so that Arna can focus her attention on her movement. While Ms. Mallory is exposing Arna to basic body parts vocabulary, the main goal of the routine is for Arna to learn the cause and effect relationship between moving her body and hearing the bells ring.
Okay, I'm going to pause there. I think you get the idea of the routine, and just some things I want to point out are just that I think you could see in the first phase, you see her attention as Mallory's demonstrating how she's going to move her body at each of those body parts, but she's not initiating those movements at that time. So that's kind of her present level, but we're just kind of using those steps to alert her, to engage her. And then we're giving her the opportunity to move her body. And so we really did work as a team to think about her positioning. We were kind of exploring and learning about which body parts had the most potential for movement. We talked a lot about the pacing, which I think Mallory does an incredible job here, where you see, finding that right balance of waiting, but not waiting too long that she's falling asleep or, gonna kind of check out or forget what she's doing. So we really work on that. What does the prompting and support look like? I also love that Mallory stays pretty quiet in between the different steps, because I think that really helps Arna focus on moving her body and doing what she needs to do. So all of those things were thought about and written down as we work together to build the routine. And hopefully you can see on page 68 where we have the embedded goals. It does show an example of documentation as we did the different steps with her each time we did the routine. And then I thought the last step on that routine on page 69, it shows, there's an exposure step at the end of the routine where we put the object into the finished container. So she's participating with some hand under hand support. We're not necessarily expecting her to do that yet, but we are exposing her. So I really like the way that we can show within a routine what we expect of her, what's achievable, what's in that zone of proximal development. And that's an IEP goal or a targeted skill. And then we also have opportunities for exposure, exposure with the object symbols, exposure with the body parts terminology. We have those opportunities that we can build in, but we know exactly what we expect Arna to do as she learns the steps of the routine. So they're scripted out there. Any questions or comments about Arna and her routine?
Oh, hi, this is Annie. Okay, my video is not working. Sorry. And if I missed this, I apologize. Was the 12 seconds, is that something that was determined for her, or is that something I don't, if you already said it, I apologize. But
No, not at all.
Okay.
That was just for her.
Okay.
And a team, you know, you can kind of work together maybe during that teaching phase to figure out how long you can expect, because it really is different for every student on,
Okay.
you know, kind of trialing it of like, okay, here's where we waited and we waited too long and she like fell asleep or whatever. So you can kind of fine tune that if you have a student like her. I think what we try to do is just, I've seen it's pretty easy and common for teachers to want to over prompt, or it gets uncomfortable when you're waiting. It's hard for the teacher not to kind of come in and support. And so we just try to specify, you know, how long we think is the right amount for her, but it's different for everybody.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Catherine says, it's nice to see both the wait time and the quality of movement that feels like success. Exactly. And that's what we're looking for, especially for students that we're targeting skills at the exploration or function level. We already know she can pay attention to us doing stuff. What we're trying to do is look for her opportunity to initiate some of those things. And we know, you know, Arna, I love showing her videos because she's a student with pretty limited physical ability. We didn't feel confident that she could grasp onto bells to ring them. We didn't feel confident about a lot of different ways that we could have her initiate that movement. And so we really had to think about, what does that look like for her? And we're really just looking for the most minimal movement that is intentional, that shows us that she understands that her body can make something happen. It's really more of that cognitive skill than the motor skill, but we're working on both of those things together. And you're right, finding that balance between waiting and then letting her do it. And you can see, you know, how excited she does get when she makes those movements. So it was a pretty big success for Arna and for our team. Okay, I'd like to move on to Freddie. He's another student. I love watching his routines, and I still do. And we still use some of this routine with Freddie to this day. And it's been a long time, but it's one of his favorites. He's a student that when we did his present level assessment, he was at the exploration zone. He's pretty good about interacting with objects, to make things happen with the objects and explore them. So we were really wanting to build that with building towards function level, building towards recognition of an object and understanding what it does and what it's for. So we knew that we were going to be targeting skills towards that upper end of exploration into function level. When we did his learning media assessment, one of the things that he loved was head massage. So he liked, you know, when we'd use that head massager thing, and he often would lean into his teacher and kind of rub his head. He would also rub his head or chin onto his shoulder or pretty much anything that was there. We thought, you know, he's pretty sensory seeking. Sometimes it would kind of turn into kind of over or just like kind of self-stimming and him checking out. So we wanted to be able to notice when he's seeking that, can we step in with a routine that actually engages him and teaches him, because we know it's pretty motivating for him. So again, that's an example of where we knew we wanted to teach him function level skills and use of objects for a purpose. And then we wanted to kind of optimize something that we know he loves and use it to our advantage of teaching those new skills. So we made the hair routine.
Exploration. Freddie learns to identify unfamiliar objects. Freddie chooses his hair routine symbol on his iPad, registered trademark.
Brush.
You want a brush? Let's brush your hair. Ms. Prey presents Freddie with his hair routine box. Look, get your water. I've got your water. Can you help me? After she taps the bottle to the table and gives Freddie elbow support, he grasps the spray bottle. Ms. Prey sprays water into her hand. With elbow support, Freddie touches the water in her hand. Ms. Prey guides his hand to his head, and after he touches his hair, she massages the water into his hair. Freddie's love of massage is the motivation for this routine. Hey. Get your wild hair. Get your wild hair. Ms. Prey holds the S&L mirror for Freddie. He attends to his reflection for just a second. She taps a brush on the table, and Freddie eventually places his hand on the handle. You want to brush that wild hair? Using hand under wrist support, she guides his hand and the brush to his head, and then she brushes his hair. Well, clean up, but look. Look at your handsome hair. Freddie looks in the mirror for a second. Let's put our water away. With arm support, Freddie drops each item into the box. He demonstrates improved grasping skills. Good job. We're gonna put our brush away. You ready? In the bucket. Good job. Good job.
All right, so again, just another good example of the routine for Freddie where we had the clear beginning and end. We had our targeted skills that we wanted to work on for him. It was, looking and recognizing an object and beginning to understand what those objects were for and what to do with them. And I'm going to show you kind of some of his progress so that you can see as well. We used something that he really loved, and then we accommodated it for him in terms of what supports we wanted to provide him physically, and kind of words that we're using, pacing, and all of those different components. And our OT had a big role in here, and you'll see some of the adjustments we made for that as well. I'm going to kind of fast forward so that you guys can see. Let's move. There's a couple different versions. I did provide links to all of these videos as well as a couple more. And so those are great. You'll be able to see all the things in between as well, because there's lots of different versions of these. We took videos every couple of months to see the progress, and we use these videos for our data collection for the research, but also they're just great ways to see kind of some of the modifications we made as we went, ways that we expand the routine, and just to kind of show success. They're great things to share with team members as well. If you have a student that kind of reminds you of your student that you have, showing these videos can help bring some team members on board as well.
May.
Okay.
Hair routine, function level. Freddie selects his brush hair routine on his iPad. Spray the water. Freddie now lifts the bottle of water out of the box without arm support. Freddie consistently holds his palm open to receive water. Freddie has difficulty bringing his open hand to his head. Watch the teacher conference chapter to learn why. He makes it with a little assistance. He enjoys his head massage. Freddie pulls the mirror from the box independently and looks at his wild hair. Ms. Prey presents and turns on a hairdryer.
Would you like to dry your hair?
Freddie looks to his teacher for confirmation and then picks up the dryer. Ms. Prey helps Freddie hold the hairdryer straight, but he keeps a good grip on it. She places the dryer back on the table.
Would you like to dry your hair?
Freddie picks it up immediately. As you can see, Freddie enjoys drying his hair and waves his free arm up and around to the sound and feel of the hairdryer.
You got it?
Freddie completes his hair routine with brushing his hair and
Hair.
looking at his handsome hair. He is now an expert at cleanup. In goes the mirror.
We need to put our brush in the box.
In goes the brush.
Good job. We need to put our water in the box. Got it?
In goes the bottle of water.
In the box. Nice.
And, with a little hesitation, because the hairdryer is Freddie's favorite, he places it in the box.
You tell me, I know this one's your favorite, isn't it? You put it in the box. Nice job.
All finished. May, teacher conference. Ms. Prey meet.
Okay, so hopefully it was exciting for you to see the progress that he made just over those different months of doing this routine consistently. You see that he, you know, from the TBI perspective, I see him more consistently looking at the objects. From the OT perspective, I know that they were really excited to see that he was grasping objects. He was, you know, engaging with them a little bit more consistently. From a cognitive perspective, you know, we're looking at his ability to demonstrate the level of understanding of what those objects are for. So that's going towards those function level skills. And we're seeing that because he's showing us by taking the object and then doing what you would do with that object. And again, he doesn't always completely do it, and that's okay, because we're looking for maximum participation at his level and just really the understanding of what's supposed to be done. And then we are there to help support and facilitate the execution of it. So we love just how we were able to see that progress. We made some tweaks with the mirror. You know, you saw we changed to one that he could hold. Because he was making such great progress, we added an additional step with the hairdryer, which then he ended up really loving. And so again, there's so many opportunities once you have the routine, you know, you can start small and then continue to grow as you see skills. You continue to add, you know, slight modifications if you see opportunities for greater participation. And it just gives you something to solidly build from. You know, we begin to understand that he is able to recognize those objects, know what they're for. And it gives us such a great just kind of springboard for opportunities for more communication and more participation down the road. I had a really great question, Kathleen, about a student with significant hearing loss as well. Probably your best bet would be to look at Isaiah's videos, and I think his is linked in the workbook as well, or you can search APH on their YouTube, Isaiah. He should come up under the sensory learning kit videos. But you know, for most of the students at the sensory motor stage, the language that we're using is probably mostly exposure to those vocabulary words. And most of what we're doing is supported either through a tactile model, a physical or verbal, or not verbal, a physical prompt, or like a visual prompt, you know, getting their visual attention towards something. And you can add in, you know, a tactile sign as well if you're wanting to teach or expose them to words that way. It's one of the things I love about the object symbols and using the symbols at the beginning and end of the routine, because it really is kind of an opportunity to support that communication through the tactile symbols, even at this early stage of development. So, but hopefully that Isaiah video will be a good demonstration of that. And Jessica, thank you for the feedback. It says great to see the bond with his teacher and the great example of how routines strengthen the trust and building of competence. So I think that was the biggest takeaway, not the biggest, but one of the biggest for that teacher and the student, because probably like many of us, you know, again, we'd kind of done routines before, but when we'd often kind of give up before we really started to see the progress. So we might, you know, start to do something and then do it for a couple weeks or a month and think, okay, this might be the most they can do. And maybe we're kind of getting bored of it. And so we switch on to something else. And so really, you know, being committed to sticking with something as it's working and then building onto it as we see continued growth. And then we just saw that trust, the anticipation, you know, hey, I know what's going on and I know I'm going to like it. So I'm very much more willing to participate and do the steps. Okay, Faith has a good question. And Faith, thanks for reminding me, bring me back. You had mentioned your student really likes vestibular. So where the student likes to walk and move. And so those, you know, there's, and feel free if anybody has some good advice on there. I've done some routines with a rocking chair has been a good one with that type of movement, with kind of like a big bouncy ball. We've done a routine that involves like walking to a specific location and you know, like there was one student, we did a routine where we walked towards a window that had some light and, you know, we had to walk a little ways and get to there and they liked the light, they liked the temperature of that window. And so we engaged with that. Even just sitting on the floor and doing kind of a rocking type routine or song can be really good. A swing, I don't know if you have access to a swing if they're able to do that, but that's another potential kind of vestibular type activity. And maybe those are some things that you can try specifically with them and see if they get that same response. But those can be good. Even one, I don't know if this is like technically vestibular, but one thing that some people really like are those parachutes, like the PE parachutes, but it kind of has some big movement if they're able to hold onto the little handles, but that's kind of a real fun one and it takes, you know, a lot of some big movements. I see a suggestion of a vibrating pillow in a tub on and off that seemed to help. Trampoline, that's a great one. I think there's one in the book that suggested like an air mattress that fills up and goes down. I don't know if that'd be enough movement, but lots of good ideas. It is like once you kind of get your brain going, you're thinking about, okay, what is the skill I want them to do? And then what could I use to like capitalize on that and get them to do something new, build that skill. Okay, we're almost at time. So I would love any questions if you've thought of any additional questions. Next week, I have another set of videos that I want to show specifically talking about the collaboration and expansion. Also going to touch on service minutes. That was another question that came up, and I think next week would be a great time to talk about it of how do I take my knowledge of this and the support that I need to provide the team and turn that into a really good recommendation for service minutes. And I use the visit tool. So I'm going to share kind of how I would fill that out for a student in this population. But yeah, next time really focusing on the collaboration, expansion, and just how to take this and suggestions I have for really putting into practice, especially from my perspective as an itinerant TVI, how I've had some success with that. But if you do have specific questions, feel free to email those if you know, I'm happy to reply, or we can talk about it at the next session as well. But I'll be on here for a couple minutes if anybody has a question, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Stacy.
All right. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, everybody.
See you next time.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.